Hi, I'm Dave, and I'm partnering with Silver Cross and Dadsnet to find out all about fatherhood. I'm an adventurer and filmmaker, and over the last few years I've travelled thousands of miles around the world, but I know that my biggest challenge is still to come: fatherhood. Being a father isn't far off for me now. As I work out what kind of dad I want to be, I'm on a mission to meet all kinds of dads from all walks of life, to hear about their challenges, their highs and lows of being a dad in the 21st century. Today I'm meeting Marvyn Harrison. He's the founder of Dope Black Dads, and I'm gonna hear what it's like to be a black dad raising black kids at a time when there's a global call for the end to systemic racism.
Dope Black Dads is a digital safe space for black fathers. It was set up in 2018. The big focus for me at the time was I was really struggling actually with my daughter Ocean, and I just couldn't connect, and I felt the pace of life that I was at. You know, me and my wife, I already had my son, and when she came, that pivot from having one child to two was a real challenge, and I just wanted the space just to talk about the things that I was struggling with. And there wasn't really one, to be honest. I couldn't find one that was like understood the kind of aspiration of growing up as a single dad, well, a man without a dad, and then also being married, being functionally successful, but also loads of things that I wanted to improve about myself. And so I created a group. The name was just by chance, to be honest. It wasn't even meant to be anything other than a place just to celebrate the fathers that I knew. And then it kind of grew. I think the greatest thing is just hearing from other dads that they're experiencing this as well. When I set it up, I thought it was like a group for me that I kind of made everybody else join by force, and I wasn't really sure what the impact would be. And then I realized pretty much within the first week that we had all been going through something and hadn't been speaking about it to anybody. And really there wasn't a place to do so, because I think traditional friendships don't really allow that type of conversation. I think they usually revolve around football and models and beer, and so I think when you have a real life challenge, you might try to say it to your friends, but are they really well equipped to answer those questions? And so I think because of the framing of the group being dope, and you know, I think people brought their best self to the space.
How important is it for you to have a community of black dads specifically?
I think it's really interesting, and the more we've been doing things around race, I'm clearer that race is absolute nonsense, but extremely very important right now. The concept of itself is such an unworkable idea. Ocean's grandmother is white. She's a white European raised in south of England, amazing middle class doctor woman. So how do you reconcile having white people in your family, having a holistic view or a systemic view of what white people do, and operate in your family unit? And we're so integrated now in many ways, it doesn't work to draw lines. But then in practical terms, the experience that my daughter will have as a darker skinned black daughter versus my son, who's more brown skinned, versus their cousin, who's even fairer skinned, is completely different. Those things matter. When you're still dealing with certain parts of the country, the world, those things matter. So it becomes extremely important. And so when I'm speaking to other black fathers about growing up 16 Hackney, the year 2000, there's a DNA in there that I don't have to say anymore. Everyone's like, I know, I was there, oh my gosh, the stories that I had. And I think that's one of the things where when you're speaking to people who understand your lived experience and don't deny your lived experience because they haven't experienced it, it saves time, it saves stress, it saves like a form of like psychosis where you're being denied what you've actually consciously seen and heard. It's irreplaceable, and as much as it becomes unworkable at points, it's so vital at the bottom of our society, and our worst form of our experience, that it just needs to happen, and we need to grow fast to get people in that type of community feel.
I was listening to your podcast, and you were saying that, you know, in 20 years when your children are grown, racism still won't be gone. So where's that sticking point between people who haven't lived your experience but don't deny it? Like how do you reach that point of understanding?
I think we're getting there more and more. If you looked at the Black Lives Matter protests, they were extremely diverse and representative of the city we're in. Mm-hmm. That's the London that I know. When I go to my workplace, I don't think race doesn't cross my mind at all until something happens to me when I'm unequivocally clear that that's what it's connected to. There are many well-intended people who offend. I think the goal is to offend less and just like be present when someone says that isn't very nice. That you're like, oh, I didn't mean to offend, and you try to repair. That's kind of how we should all go through our life anyway.
As a black dad, bringing up black kids in the 21st century, you got more to worry about and deal with than just eat your greens.
Yes. I would love my biggest challenge to be my children not eat enough broccoli. I would swap with that parent immediately. And to be honest, in many ways, that is a challenge, and I think what we're trying to do is monitor. What information do you need as my child at this particular moment? How much do I explain about the last 6 months? Because you don't want to stain them with ideas that aren't true in their actual present, in their future. But you also don't want it to happen to them and then not be prepared in any way, shape or form. So I think the biggest challenge is, what's the balance between informing them and harming them?
I find it really crazy that you have to take a long test to learn how to drive a car, and then you have a child and you're home with it.
Because people care more about objects than they do human beings. It's like to drive this human being, to manage this human being, just go out and figure it out. Any major problems, check in with these services, but I know, just go out there, it's fine. With a car, it's like, no, because you could damage property.
Yeah, you've got to be careful about that. As a black dad, what do you feel you have to teach your kids that you shouldn't have to teach your kids?
I think the biggest thing is just humanity and how you interact with people. And how they see you isn't based on who you actually are. And I think the biggest challenge is trying to educate your children that in someone's mind they may see you as something, when in reality, you can't control what's in people's minds. You can't control what they've seen, listened to, heard, and to form the opinions that they've formed about you in advance. And that we all do it in some level in terms of make assumptions on who the person is. It's our way of protecting ourselves. You monitor, you look around, and certain things may tell you that you might need to be a bit more cautious than not. The problem is that when you act on that and you make judgments on jobs and where people can live and lending them money through institutions, there's so many levels of racism and institutional level that impacts parents. That's what impacts the children probably more in the short term. And then when they go into school, you're dealing with, an institution that has many well-intended people in it. But also, if you take a teacher from a reasonable part of Britain, let's say Norfolk, let's pick on Norfolk, they come to London and see a completely different environment than they've ever seen. They've never experienced those types of parents, those types of children before, and so they make assumptions. They don't understand the cultural difference and why those things have occurred, and so they then become the guide of your children. There is still a lot of systemic racism, there's still a lot of individual racism. I've never been called the N-word online more than in the current day.
Really?
And I think largely, we stay out of the you're a racist space because it doesn't work. But you find yourself representing your likeness, and then you really see what people think of you, or what is possible when a large amount of people make a estimation on who you are, and what impact that can have on your mental health. I've definitely had anxiety attacks at times dealing with large-scale racism, going on to right-wing platforms and then mentioning things. So it's a real challenge, but I think the main thing is I'm optimistic. I want to be the line. I don't want to inject my children with those feelings and thoughts. I kind of want to be the line which starts the new way of doing things, in the hope that the world is ready for it. If it's not, I know exactly what to do. I have my 10-point plan to preserve my children, and I'm happy to engage it whenever I need to.
With Dope Black Dads, how important is it then to have that safe space where black dads can get together and share all of their challenges and wins?
Because for me, I think it's important, and I feel like in many ways that type of environment is needed for many people. because often you might have a bad idea, and before you put it into the world fully, you need to stress test it with some people who know you enough, who understand humanity enough and can challenge you. And I also think, like, there's a book called The Ways of a Superior Man, and in that book they talk about holding counsel with other men and the value of that. And I think there's a tremendous amount of value. I can't get away with anything. There's no fat on me now, because every time I try to be a little bit lazy or complacent, they're like, no.
Yeah.
And I think that robust, being held to account, that robust accountability is incredible. It's a gift, really. And I've been very, very fortunate to have 175 men in my life for 2 years every day reminding me of myself. It's like 175 wives without all the love and the cuddles.
Sounds perfect. I have a feeling there's going to be more around the corner as well.
Yes, and we've got more spaces in more countries, more groups, and we're expanding every day. So it's been an incredible ride, and I'm honoured to have shared space with some of these men. So it's been good.